In episode 3 of House of the Dragon, the show jumps forward several years to after the birth of Viserys and Alicent's first son, Aegon, and Alicent is pregnant with their first daughter, Helaena. Otto schemes to put Aegon on the throne. Meanwhile, Daemon and Corlys are fighting in the Stepstones. When King Viserys took Alicent Hightower to wife in 106 AC, House Valyrion was notable for its absence. Princess Rhaenyra poured for her stepmother at the feast, and Queen Alicent kissed her and named her daughter. The princess was amongst the women who disrobed the king and delivered him to the bedchamber of his bride. Laughter and love ruled the Red Keep that night, whilst across Blackwater Bay, Lord Corlys the Sea Snake welcomed the king's brother, Prince Daemon, to a war council. The conquest and annexation of the Stepstones by the kingdoms of the Three Daughters at first met with only approval from the lords of Westeros. The avarice of Craghas Crabfeeder and his partners in conquest soon turned feelings against them, however. The toll was raised again and yet again, soon becoming so ruinous that merchants who had once paid gladly now sought to slip past the galleys of the Triarchy, as once they had the pirates. Drahar and his Lysene and Tyroshi co-admirals seemed to be vying with each other to see who was the greediest, men complained. Of all the lords of Westeros, none suffered so much from these practices as Corlys Velaryon, Lord of the Tides, whose fleets had made him as wealthy and powerful as any man in the Seven Kingdoms. The Sea Snake was determined to put an end to this Triarchy's rule over the Stepstones, and in Daemon Targaryen he found a willing partner, eager for the gold and glory that victory in war would bring him. Shunning the king's wedding, they laid their plans in high tide on the Isle Driftmark. Lord Valyrion would command the fleet, Prince Daemon the army. They would be greatly outnumbered by the forces of the Three Daughters, but the prince would also bring to battle the fires of his dragon, Caraxes, the Bloodworm. It is not our purpose here to recount the details of the private war Daemon Targaryen and Corlys Velaryon waged on the Stepstones. Suffice it to say that the fighting began in 106 AC. Prince Daemon had little difficulty assembling an army of landless adventurers and second sons, and won many victories during the first 2 years of the conflict. King Viserys, doubtless pleased to be rid of his troublesome brother, with regular infusions of gold, and by 109 AC, Daemon Targaryen and his army of sellswords and cutthroats controlled all but 2 of the islands, and the Sea Snake's fleets had taken firm control of the waters between. During this brief moment of victory, Prince Daemon declared himself King of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea, and Lord Corlys placed a crown upon his head, but their kingdom was far from secure. The next year, the kingdom of the Three Daughters dispatched a fresh invasion force, and Dorne joined the war in alliance with the Triarchy. Fighting resumed. Though the Stepstones were engulfed in blood and fire, King Viserys and his court remain unperturbed. Let Daemon play at war, his grace is reported to have said. It keeps him out of trouble. Viserys was a man of peace, and during these years, King's Landing was an endless round of feasts, balls, and tourneys, where mummers and singers heralded the birth of each new Targaryen princeling. Queen Alicent had soon proved to be as fertile as she was pretty. In 107 AC, she bore the king a healthy son, naming him Aegon, after the conqueror. 2 years later, she produced a daughter for the king, Helaena, in 110 AC. She bore him a second son, Aemond, who was said to be half the size of his elder brother, but twice as fierce. Yet, Princess Rhaenyra continued to sit at the foot of the Iron Throne when her father held court, and his grace began bringing her to meetings of the small council as well. Though many lords and knights sought her favour, the princess had eyes only for Sir Criston Cole, the young champion of the Kingsguard, and her constant companion. Sir Criston protects the princess from her enemies, but who protects the princess from Sir Criston? Queen Alicent asked one day at court. The amity between her grace and her stepdaughter had proved short-lived, for both Rhaenyra and Alicent aspired to be the first lady of the realm. And though the queen had given the king not 1 but 2 male heirs, Viserys had done nothing to change the order of succession. The Princess of Dragonstone remained his acknowledged heir, with half the lords of Westeros sworn to defend her rights. Those who asked, "What of the ruling of the Great Council of 101?" found their words falling on deaf ears. The matter had been decided, as far as King Viserys was concerned. It was not an issue His Grace cared to revisit. Still, questions persisted, not the least from Queen Alicent herself. Loudest amongst her supporters was her father, Sir Otto Hightower, Hand of the King. Now, here are the differences. In the books, the motives of Criston Cole and his relationship with Rhaenyra is quite mysterious, but obviously the show won't be able to do this, and so we'll get a clear picture of who Cole, the Kingmaker, really is. The Great Hunt is a show-only inclusion, but is again reminiscent of King Robert, who Viserys is meant to emulate, since both of them reigned over peaceful years, only to plunge the realm into dynastic chaos with competing claims to the Iron Throne that they inadvertently caused. The war in the Stepstones is also much more visceral than the brief mentions of it we get in the book. Anyway, this was a really great episode of House of the Dragon, and we can't wait to make more videos on the differences between show and book. In the meantime, check out our playlists on every chapter of A Game of Thrones Explained, and our entire A Feast for Dragons book explained. Also, when you get the chance, try out Fantasy Flight's A Game of Thrones board game digital edition.